Hi, welcome to the Getting More Students podcast. The podcast if you are a language school owner or a tutoring company and you're trying to get more students and do that either through better marketing, better service, better experience, and better sales. And I'm here with my co-host, Herbert Gitzer.
Hi, Alex. Great to be here again.
Absolutely. Now, Herbert, we've got quite a fun topic, actually. We're doing a little bit of context setting, trying to figure out where we're at. At this particular moment, we're in the start of April, and we're looking back on the year past, which is the year of COVID, effectively, being obviously the biggest game changer to the scene. And what we wanted to do on today's podcast is not just reflect a little bit back on what trends are like still very present and very current, but also look towards the future. What are the big kind of macro trends from both, that macro high level across everything, looking at a more sector level, like what is impacting language schools and tutoring companies, and then also at a marketing level, what is impacting what we do in terms of trying to get more students.
Absolutely. And I mean, so much has changed in the past year. And language schools and tutoring companies have really had to adapt to this new way of learning and also promoting their services. So, I know from speaking to a lot of language schools that a lot of them are struggling, especially in-person language schools or language travel schools. I mean, many of them have gone out of business.
That's right.
Such a shame.
Absolutely. And it's because there's been just such a massive change in such a small amount of time. Now, we're going to have some people that are listening that are maybe language school owners. We're going to have some people that are listening that are online language school owners or tutoring companies. And we've got others that maybe been even face-to-face tutoring companies. So we'll have a different listener here. But the one group that we might start off with are the physical language school owners, because they've probably been the hardest hit out of any group I can think of. One of those things that remains a major, let's call it maybe even a potentially short-lasting trend, which is the impact of COVID-19 on physical language schools. Why is this such a big impact? Well, COVID-19 has forced so many national governments to continue with lockdowns, whether they be a persistent lockdown or even just sort of a circuit breaker every now and again to kind of try and keep their healthcare systems able to deal with the overload. So we're seeing lockdowns having a big impact. We've got some really interesting trends that I think we're very much at the beginning, which we knew that we were going to have to deal with, which is with vaccines. Uncertainty there on not necessarily how effective they'll be, but more if they're effective, how many people will take them, and then will that have the result that most people are hoping, which is a return back to normal activity. And again, the biggest result there is travel restrictions. And again, it's going from travel hard restrictions probably towards travel hesitation. Is that a short or a long-term trend? I think there's some interest there. Are we going to have a bit of a hangover effect, or are we actually going to fully just break out of it and suddenly it's just a massive boom time? Everyone wants to go traveling and everyone feels confident to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that the demand is there for language travel, but obviously with restrictions in place and some countries maybe having or introducing vaccine passports, it's a bit of a hassle to travel these days. And so, people are going to think twice before traveling internationally. And obviously that's not good, still not good news for the industry.
That's right. So I think we certainly see that as probably being the biggest, change. And I think actually that's very much felt on the physical language school market. Now, one of the interesting things was when we also kind of look at just sort of online language schools and online tutoring companies who are, in a way, that's the beneficiary, right? So if everybody is learning online, then the natural beneficiaries are those that are best set up for that.
of
And
course.
one thing I thought was quite interesting, and certainly from the conversations I've had, and more so with those that run a brick and mortar kind of school or tutoring company, is the sense of, oh wow, there's this massive change, and now we're doing everything online and doing all this online learning. And one of the reasons I find that quite an interesting one is actually this was going on for a very long time. So, with my business and LearnCube, and since we help particularly online language schools and tutoring companies, this is obviously something that's been going on for a very long time. People have been trying to deliver online teaching ever since Skype started in 2004, or even if you look at machine-powered kind of instruction tools like, language learning apps or tutoring apps or those things, probably since 2008, when the iPhone sort of popularized this ability to learn on the go. But these are not, so this is not a 2020 trend. This has been around for a very long time. And there are some players that have been there for such a long time that they have become those new incumbents. I think that's kind of curious in itself. Like some of the biggest companies before COVID-19 were brick and mortar companies, and now it sort of feels like there's been a game changer, but it's mainly because so many people are learning online, and then the incumbents that were online have become even bigger. How does that feel to you, Herbert, also sort of looking from your perspective?
Oh, it's exactly the same thing. Especially in my area of online advertising, a lot of language companies and tutoring businesses, especially the brick and mortar ones, were kind of resistant to change and were a bit skeptical about online marketing or investing a lot in online marketing pre-COVID. And now with this digital transformation, there's no way out of it, right? They're forced into this situation where they have to find new ways of promoting, of finding new audiences and new students. So I saw a meme a while ago, and it had what propelled the digital transformation of your company? A, the CEO, B, the CTO, or C, COVID-19. And I think that applies to quite a number of companies and businesses out there.
That's absolutely right. So I think what we're kind of acknowledging is that, and I think it's well said by so many others, which is we're seeing the trends that were already in existence accelerating massively. And that has really made the landscape feel very different in such a short amount of time. And there's some really interesting other trends that I think are, let's call them short term, but we really don't know where they'll go. Like how much of a hangover will we have? So for example, we've got some that probably have a duration around them. So national tutoring programs that are being pushed out, certainly one in the UK. Other countries are also having a look at whether they might need to do something extraordinary in order to have their students catch up, where we may or may not, do we have a boom? Do we have a recession? I think at the moment there's two sort of ways that it could play out. And I don't think anyone's got a crystal ball, but certainly, who would have thought that we're seeing one of the biggest surges in stock markets in recent history straight after a pandemic. I mean, again, do we call that a trend, a blip, a surge?
I don't know. It's that K-shaped recovery, right? I mean, some industries really are profiting from the current situation. Others, are just declining, tourism and unfortunately brick and mortar, a lot of brick and mortar businesses. But I mean, recession, who knows, but I guess everyone needs to prepare for what might come.
But I guess, and that sort of gets us into the next part of our conversation today, is kind of looking at those trends in a more, what are the long-lasting trends in existence, and what can we kind of learn from our current situation, and kind of going back to this kind of K-shaped recovery that obviously shows massive opportunity and also some risks. So if
Absolutely.
let's say that you are looking for, let's say you're in tutoring, some of the customers that you were going for may not feel like they're able to get into tutoring, whereas whole new opportunities might have now arisen from that opportunity. So some of your customers might have done, effectively prospered over this last year, and so might be willing to do more tutoring, whereas others, as we all know, might have found it really, really hard and found that that they have to discontinue. So how do you direct your marketing so that you're getting more of the students that there's a fit for the service or product that you want to deliver?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone, all types of businesses have had to update their buyer persona, right? Because that's changed over the last year, especially when going online. Your target audience pre COVID might not even be the same target audience right now. So if you're offering an online service, you're going to have to look, okay, who is buying this, who can buy it, and who needs it, and adjusting your marketing, your offer to that new audience.
Yeah, I think that's certainly going to be the main insight of this conversation. But before we kind of jump into that outcome, I think it's kind of maybe curious for us all to kind of also relook at the trends that, again, were already there and are only accelerating in a big way. And some of the ideas that we had was, technology is a natural one. So is technology a new trend? No, absolutely not. But I mean, think about, there's been massive advances, even just in terms of the accessibility of data and internet, and even the price points that are now offered. That's changed a lot, which has opened a whole lot of new potential purchases for tutoring and language services if they're able to access online. Mobile has improved. Again, not a new trend, but developed rapidly. Cloud services, real-time communication services, courses, apps, software like
online courses everywhere and apps everywhere, right?
Absolutely. So there's been this huge acceleration on all of the fronts when it comes to technology, and I see that absolutely being long-lasting. I don't see there being a reversion.
No.
It's just about getting more convenient, more efficient, more effective, smarter technology. But probably one thing that has changed in technology is and I think it's a good thing, the increased expectation and standards of technology. People have greater expectations of what technology should do for them, particularly in the learning space. So, ourselves as technology providers, everyone's having to raise the game and raise the bar.
Yeah.
So I think it's quite interesting.
Skype and Zoom won't do these days. Everyone wants more personalized interfaces, a user-friendly experience. Just more.
I think even personalization is another trend that's always been. I mean, it's not gone away, and I think. Always the promise of technology is how can we keep the costs either the same or lower, but provide a more personalized, better experience for every user. I think we're also, one of the ones that we were talking about that I think is, again, like, can you look in a crystal ball? The rise of China. I think it's fascinating. Particularly, we were like, hey, is this relevant to getting more students? And certainly for, if you're teaching languages, it's naturally one of the biggest source of students for brick and mortar, physical schools, or it's, for international education, it's one of the biggest sources of students. Online, it's one of the biggest markets in the world. So naturally, that's going to have a very big impact. And one of the other aspects that sort of comes from that is not just the demand side. Hey, there's this huge pool of students that are becoming increasingly integrated online. But actually, are they becoming more integrated? We've got the reaction of the US against sort of, what's going on in terms of them wanting to, maintain a kind of number one position. And there's all the kind of symptoms of that kind of dynamic. And all of the people and allies and countries that all are now needing to make various choices. Australia, I'm a New Zealander, and Australia has obviously had some really big repercussions of choosing where they, who they're supporting. And I think that's really fascinating, even from an education perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course the competition, in China, the domestic competition from Chinese learning companies, is huge. So if, learning companies want to target and infiltrate that market, they're going to have to take a very strategic approach and change a lot of kind of throw everything out the window in terms of what they use for marketing and how they offer their services, and really do it based on what their Chinese audience wants and how they kind of use technology.
And how they can differentiate. So a lot of Chinese companies, I mean, even if you look at some of the other sector trends, including venture capital, like most of the largest education edtech companies are coming out of Asia. Huge companies. And so they have vast resources, both on the technological front and the scale side of things. In terms of their sales machine, it's vast. So I think when people are thinking about marketing and where they're going to get their students, if China was the main source that they expect to get students from, okay, how do we go about that? Might have changed quite significantly over the last year.
Yeah. Marketing in China has always been, challenging, just because you kind of play by different rules and you use different platforms and, and now I guess the competition is even stronger with these $1 billion Chinese, learning companies that are just, gaining market share every day.
And the interesting thing is it's not, I think those $1 billion valuations are now sort of finding their way into other countries. Duolingo is another example of a $2.4 billion company. GoStudent just the other day in the tutoring space raised €70 million.
Which is so fascinating because, online tutoring, it's an online tutoring company, but online tutoring isn't new. It's been around for a decade, decades. Yet they've been able to really find their niche, within that space.
Yeah, and I think you're just seeing it again and again where I think what's quite interesting in the tutoring space, and I think we can learn from that in languages as well, is, each country is different. And it has its own peculiarities about what they like and what they don't like. So again, we can kind of learn from that. In the tutoring space, one of the things that is quite interesting, rather than it being subject-led, which, for example, you can learn English anywhere potentially. If you're wanting to learn math, for example, it might be based on a particular country's curriculum.
Right.
And we're already seeing also some trends of regional solidarity in a way. So regions coming together, certainly I think we saw lately in some of the Southeast Asian countries, joining together and maybe saying, hey, I think Singapore and some of the other countries, maybe I think Cambodia and a few of the other countries were saying, hey, let's have a similar curriculum in certain areas. Will that be an ongoing trend? So some really interesting things to look out for in the trends that are affecting, as we say, kind of at that macro level, impacting everybody, all industries, but perhaps in different ways. And then also at the sector level of online tutoring or language education, there's some really big changes in there. And so what we were going to spend the last part of our conversation on was on the marketing trends. I was interested in maybe sort of breaking this up in a few ways. The first is, I think we're seeing a big change in who's responsible for getting students.
Right.
Certainly in the language education space, and certainly when it comes to physical language schools, which you know very well, Herbert. What's been your view on what trends are there for brick and mortar in-person language schools?
Got it. I mean, pre-COVID, most or many physical language schools or traditional language schools, heavily relied on education agents to provide them with students. a very important relationship in the international education space. And of course, today, even more important. But I guess with the crisis coming into play, language schools felt the need to, I guess, take over more responsibility for their direct-to-consumer marketing, especially at the beginning of the pandemic when, at least from what I heard from language schools, agents didn't really like the prospect of offering online courses, which meant language schools were basically on their own in terms of, finding and getting and acquiring their students themselves. And so they really needed to adapt quite quickly to online marketing, which a lot of traditional language schools had never embarked on or never, experimented with. And so, the prospect of how do I run Google ads or Facebook ads or, what's TikTok? Do I need an Instagram profile? These were all questions, that needed answering very quickly. And so there's been a huge boom in terms of online marketing for language schools and finding those platforms that really work for them and increasing their direct to consumer business.
I imagine there were some changes also for tutoring companies, because they might have had channels that were really reliant on people maybe coming in person or talking to people or even just think about the conversations. The conversations changed. Anyone that was relying on in-person conversations, whether it even be friends and maybe networks within schools or anything like that, that might have changed because there wasn't a physical location to have those conversations. No. Therefore, those conversations and those referrals could only happen online. And so what were the communities that sort of created those referrals and created the reviews, which again, a lot of education companies rely on to get their customers and get ongoing customers, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. And they had to find other ways of kind of keeping that kind of a referral or word of mouth business, whether that be through Facebook groups or forums or some sort of loyalty program. I mean, email marketing, obviously a huge thing now that there's no face-to-face networking. So yeah, I mean, training companies and language schools really had to reinvigorate their whole online marketing strategy to figure out how to thrive in this challenging era, so to say.
One thing I think seems quite clear is it's very important, if not essential, that anyone that's listening to this, if they're running a tutoring company or language school, online or in person, online marketing is a major. It's an absolute essential kind of skill to have.
It's a must. It's an absolute must. You either need to acquire the skills yourself or hire someone, or outsource it to, a marketing agency, to do it for you. Really. Those are your two options, but, you absolutely need to be able to promote and market your school and your courses, your offerings online in a way that is profitable and reaching your target audience.
That's right. And there might have been what are some of the trends? And again, a lot of these trends we were talking about before, Herbert, you said kind of there already, but they've just been put into hyperdrive and probably also with a lot more competition. What were some of the trends in online marketing that were occurring?
Sure. I mean, even in the past, user-generated content was at the forefront. I mean, not only is it easier for schools because they don't have to create the content themselves and their marketing teams, but it is just more authentic. You're seeing real students, real teachers from their perspective, either through videos or photos or stories and testimonials, being able to leverage UGC, as we like to call it, user-generated content, is absolutely crucial these days in order to show, potential students, what is your language school like? What is the journey that they're going to take with your school, the transformation that they're going to make, and also to build social proof and trust. So user-generated content is definitely a huge thing that really any business should be using.
That's right. And also that trust factor is there if you have an in-person student that you need to kind of meet, they're still going to look online, like regardless
Absolutely.
of whether the service is delivered online or in person. Particularly again, these are not new trends. They're just being put into hyperdrive over the last year because that was the only real way to do that. But think about, Google reviews is one example. Like, before you kind of hit the pay button, am I going to check out reviews of a particular service or, company that I'm going to be wanting to use? Even at a person, people might just put in the person's name in Google, but all of these things are making online marketing a lot more important at every part of that funnel, from I'm aware of a company to I'm in the decision-making process.
Yeah, and that build the trust phase has become even more important, with this surge of new activity online and new companies offering online products. People have become a little more skeptical when it comes to online marketing just because they're being bombarded all the time with ads and ads for all types of products. So having, again, user-generated content, leveraging video marketing, which is also very important to show kind of the behind the scenes of your business, who's behind the business, your teachers, your tutors, your students, the content that you use in your classes, how your online classes work, et cetera, is really a way to build that social proof and trust. And another big question that I often get from customers is, what kind of platform should I use? Should I be on everything? Should I be on Snapchat, Twitter, YouTube, Google, Facebook, Instagram, or do I stick to one or two? And new platforms are popping up all the time. Now we have TikTok, now we have Clubhouse, and it's really challenging to make the right decision as to should I adopt this now? Is it worth spending the time and the resources to make it worthwhile and reach my customer? And I'm always a fan of keeping things simple and making sure that you are active, consistently active on the 1, 2, maybe even 3 platforms where your users are spending the most time online. And that is different, of course, for every tutoring business or language company. If you're in the B2B space and you're selling courses or tutoring to companies, then Instagram is probably not the platform for you. You might have to look at LinkedIn and developing your kind of authority there through valuable content. It might be YouTube, but if you're targeting Gen Z, for example, then a TikTok strategy could be very useful. Short, fun videos showing your students or your teachers or your school.
Yeah, I think that's rather than feeling like this is a negative thing, I think that's the exciting thing, is that there are opportunities. And for the same reason that it seems like, hey, do I take a punt on a new platform? I'm not suggesting you do or don't, but there's an opportunity there regardless. There's probably, Absolutely. For the same reason that maybe you're like, oh, do I do it? Do I not do it? Some of the big, your biggest competitors might also be going, oh, do I do it? Maybe I'll just stick with the one that I'm on. And then that might give you the breathing space to be able to find, a new market that you can really excel in. So I think, again, lots of interesting and kind of positive things to look forward to. So
yeah. As this digital space develops and new innovation and platforms come out, you gotta really decide where to invest your time and resources wisely.
That's right. So Herbert, I've really enjoyed today's conversation. We've talked about the context where we find ourselves in at sort of this point in time, which is in the start of Q2 of 2021. We are looking at what are short-term trends. We're looking at what are the long-term trends. We've really talked at the sector level, at the macro level, and we're finally just seeing all of these marketing trends as well. So lots of things to take in here, and I really hope you as our listeners have enjoyed it. We've enjoyed passing all of this conversation to you. This is a newer podcast for us. So firstly, thank you very much for listening in. We're going to be releasing a new episode once a week. So please hit that subscribe button to this podcast so you get a shiny new episode each week. And we're going to continue to deliver on our promise, which is to help language schools and tutoring companies just like you. We're wanting to provide insights, inspiration, and motivation, particularly on getting more students on marketing and on the surrounding topics that help you drive your business. So stay up to date, and please again hit that subscribe button, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks again.
Catch you in the next one.